Okay, welcome back, Inebri-ites. This is Andy, the Inebri-art podcast. We are back here again at the Craft Beer Cellar, recording in the basement of the cellar. And if you're in Plymouth, make sure you stop in and check out their beer and boutique wine selection, and CBD drinks, which is a thing now.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, I don't really understand it, but teach their own. And a while ago, we interviewed Steve Van Samson.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
And I guess he came back. And we've been wanting to get Derek Rook on for ages, and it's just never happened because he lives off in the far-off land.
Yeah. I don't know if it's you who lives in one or I live in one, but we met it.
I feel like it's you. We met. You met it. No, I remember.
I met you at Rocket Shock, didn't I?
No, you came to, I think, our first figure drawing.
Inebri-art that you did with Sarah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know if it was, I can't remember if I met you at Rocket Shock first.
I don't remember either. I was trying to figure that out on the way here. I remember you and Mike I met together.
Yeah, and I mean that's like a matter of months apart, I think, because Rock and Shock was usually like in October, and I think we started in September, so I think you probably came down here first.
It had to be somewhere around here, too, because the parking felt very much the same.
Yeah, it's right across the street, basically.
Okay,
It's a nightmare.
Well, thank you for having us. This is awesome.
Yeah, I'm very glad to have both of you on. And you guys are together because of Rough House Publishing.
That's it. The wedding day is next month.
Nice.
We'll be sending out
invitations. We're making it official tonight. The reception will be at 7:30.
Nice.
Bring vodka.
Band or DJ?
Oh, I mean, obviously a band.
Well, we are the band,
right.
So we kind of, do the Cornish hens,
Cornish hens. For our listeners, what is Rough House Publishing?
Rough House Publishing is an independent publishing company that I started back in 2011. And the reason that I started it, I had worked in the industry already for a bunch of years, probably closer to about a decade and a half at that point. And I had left the business for a while. And when I got myself back into it, I noticed that I was getting a lot of the same things that were turning me off about the first time around, which is artists were getting short thrift. People would start projects, and then the money would run out when the artists got time to get paid. The whole. I think everybody in this room has heard it at least 19 times.
It's your time to get a check, and suddenly they have no money.
Or they want to pay you in other ways, like grandma's home cooking or whatever, which actually would have been better than what we got, which was usually just nothing. Pat on the back or the finger.
Yeah, it works for Nelson Murdoch, but it does not work for.
No, I learned real quick that doesn't pay the rent for sure. So Rough House was a way for us to, or for me actually at the time, to publish some intimate things that I had ready to rock with without having to have any interference from any outside people, and being basically the master of your own destiny.
Yeah.
And through that process, we kind of banded together, a bunch of us, and organically we got some comic book licenses, so we just kind of went with the flow instead of trying to keep us in a box. But we make comic book entertainment, but as everybody that does these shows know,
someone comes up with a good idea and you're like, oh yeah, shit, let's do that.
Well, you know what it is too, is that the comic book industry is still on a decline. You'd think with all these amazing Marvel movies that come out now that it would do something for that whole part of the market, but I kind of realized that Marvel Comics as an example, DC to a certain extent too, the comic books have become advertisements.
Right. Yeah.
Almost like flyers, really, for the movies. It doesn't add any value. It doesn't equate to any sales for that kind of thing. So to me, the comic book market is dying still.
Right.
The entertainment value, the IPs are doing well, but the comic book specifically not so much.
And it's one of those weird things where, if you're not deeply invested in the comic book world and you go and see Captain America or an Avengers movie, and then you go pick up a comic book and be like, well, this isn't like the movie, and I don't understand what's going on, and this person isn't the same as in the movie, so
sure.
it almost kind of drives a weird wedge in between the two.
Yeah, and I think the average fan will figure out real quick that you're not going to be in love with these movies going to your local comic book shop and then have a continuation of all that awesome stuff in comic book form. So basically what we wanted to do is create an event in comic book form, or just in publishing form in general. So every time we do something, we want to make it so that number one, it's a physical entity that you can buy in your hands that you can keep as a collectible, say, not something that you can download. We decided early on not to even bother with any downloadable content at this point, anyways.
Oh, okay. So not at all.
Not at all.
Oh, okay.
I know it would equate to sales, but we fell in love with the physical, tangible books that we grew up with. And we are trying to recreate that comic book experience for a new audience. But again, it's an experience now. It's kind of like when your favorite movie would come out on DVD or Blu-ray, and there was the stripped-down version, and then there was like the 3-disc special edition with all the
director's cut, and
all the bells and whistles.
There were whistles. I was just going to say, and bells. That's true.
Bells.
Yep.
And that's what we do with our content. So every time we come out with a new book, no matter what it is, we invite all of our, I don't like to call them fans, we call them ruffians.
Okay.
Because we all come from the same place. It's literally...
there's a little TM on the top of the
trademark.
end of that.
Yeah. That's
it's silent when you say it, but... yeah, it's there.
Sure. But and that's what we do. That's the general mantra of what we do. We try to create an experience for our fans so that they don't want to sell it on eBay. They don't want to read it once and then throw it away. They want to put it on their shelf, and they want to display it, and they want to keep it for 20, 30 years. You know what I mean? And so far, I have to say, if we are going to give ourselves a little bit of a pat on the back, only one occasion has any of our books have been on the secondary market.
Oh, really?
That I've seen, anyways.
And how did you get involved with Steve?
All right, so
you haven't even given me a beer for me to take that joke.
No. Well, I mean, you've been on the podcast once. Now you're friends. So.
Okay. Well, Steve is an extrovert. It's funny because for an owner of a company, I've relied heavily on the content selling itself because I'm a pretty humble salesman, which usually doesn't go good together.
Right.
But Steve, on the other hand, he just came right over and he's like, "Hey, I'm Steve," you know. So this was ScareCon last year.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was just getting ready to do a soft reboot of the entire Rough House company.
Yeah.
We had been dormant for a couple of years at that point. There had been some lineup changes. You know, I kind of talk about Rough House as if it's a band. So if I talk about things like lineup changes and content changes, it's kind of all falls under that category. But ScareCon was basically me picking myself up by the bootstraps and dusting myself off and just getting back out there again. The equivalent of a band that hasn't played in a while, so we just do a local show and just kind of get the cobwebs out.
With no drummer.
I'm all cowbell.
Yeah.
And then Steve came over, said hello, and secretly, I was actually looking for another partner, somebody that I could partner up with. We have another gentleman from Wisconsin. His name's Mike Wason, who's been with me since the beginning of Rough House as well. But I was wearing a lot of hats at that point, and I needed somebody who could be creative but could also understand the business side of things, could do a lot of the things that I do so that we could split up duties. But not just somebody who could help me out, not like an assistant, but somebody who could actually help us take the company to another level.
Right.
And I was secretly looking for that person. I made no formal announcements, but I kept it in the back of my mind that if some person came along that fit that bill, that I would pursue. And when Steve came over and said hello, we became fast friends. We have some mutual friends.
Yeah.
Yourself being one of them,
yeah.
Obviously, which I just found out a couple days before this podcast, actually. And after talking to him for a while, I realized that we were definitely cut from the same cloth, that we park our cars in the same garage, that we want a lot of the same things out of the industry. The stuff that he does independently of anything that we have going on together was phenomenal already. So, and he knew how to present himself. He knew how to sell himself really well. He said he loved Alice Cooper, so he didn't know it then, but that was it. Conversation 2. He was already hired. He just didn't know.
So remember, folks, you never know what an Alice Cooper shirt will get you. So you might as well just wear one all the time.
For sure.
I got a funny Alice Cooper story. My son was, it's probably like 2 at the time, and my ex-wife was putting together a photo album. And he wanted to do one too, so she gave him like a little photo album and a bunch of pictures. And so I got home from work, and he's showing me. He's like, "This is me and you, and this is me and Mummy, and this is you and Mummy, and this is me, you and Mummy, and this is." He called my father Tweety. It's a totally different story. You know, this is Tweety and you, and this is Tweety, me and you. This is Alice Cooper, and this is me and Mummy. And I'm like, wait, what? Go back.
Go back. Go back to. What was that?
So, yeah.
I would have been like, go back one more. Tweety? Who's Tweety?
That was my Alice Cooper story. Sorry.
So they had a picture taken with Alice Cooper.
My ex had been to an Alice Cooper concert and taken a picture of, and had it developed. I mean, this was how long ago it was.
Wow.
And
that's still pretty awesome, though.
Yeah, and Liam was a big Alice Cooper fan because I brought him up right and showed him all the old Muppets, and he loved the Alice Cooper episode.
Nice.
So you love the Muppet era of Alice Cooper.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I knew you were so cool.
right.
I already knew you were cool. But now we share the same uncle.
So Rough House, which you may be able to tell from the title, is not necessarily family orientated.
Yes
These
and no.
are scary books.
Well, the original tagline for the company was "Home of the Not So Funny Books,
Okay.
Music and Pulp Media." The idea behind what we did was that, again, we're doing comic books now, but that doesn't necessarily mean a year from now that's just going to be the entire catalog.
Right.
Eventually, we have so many ideas that we're kind of holding back on. One of the first things that I did with this second relaunch of the company was learn the value of restraint. In the past, I'd say we got 10 different projects coming out in the next 2 years, and I name them all off and what they are, and then of course,
And then people just kind of get overloaded and forget all of them.
You just start to realize that as 1.5 persons all the time, that that train moves a hell of a lot slower than you'd like it to. But we have some really great ideas for things well beyond comic books, like full-length novels, novellas that include artwork and a bunch of special features and things like that. Again, bringing Steve into the fold, he's a novelist,
Right.
and he writes amazing content of his own. And right now, it's I guess you would say that it's horror centric, both of us, and you wouldn't be wrong. But there's so many things that we enjoyed growing up that we want to introduce. Steve's a musician, as an example. I am too. So we want to incorporate those elements into what we do as well. We have some magazine ideas that we want to do. Just so much. So we don't want to box ourselves in. Right now, it's the kind of stuff that we do. A lot of times has an adult overtone to it. I don't even want to say a horrific overtone, but it definitely appeals to somebody above a certain age.
Right.
But I did change my last name a long time ago for a reason, because one day I wanted to do children's books.
Yeah.
So who knows? I mean, the door is open. I don't want the fans of Rough House to hear that and say, "Oh no, they're going to start doing children's books next year."
That there's even a precedent for that.
Rough House is going to put out their Load album. Oh no!
Well, I walked into the paper store a couple months ago and I saw a book that they were selling there, saying it's a children's book, and I'm not going to swear, but it said "Go the F to Sleep." It was the name of the book. You've seen that. So, and I read through it, and I just thought it was the most hilarious thing. Yeah. So
funnier when Samuel L. Jackson is reading it.
Right. Like that'd be the guy you'd want to do the audio.
I actually
commentary.
went out and
well, it's out there.
There was
it's out there. Yeah. Oh yeah.
There's a good Christmas book called, I think, Christmas is Burning, and it's like an elf that was sick of Christmas and decides to burn the whole holiday down.
Yeah, see, I could see us doing something along that ilk.
Didn't Clive Barker do kids books at one point? Am I remembering that correctly? I'm pretty sure there's a horror author that did some kids books.
I mean, Neil Gaiman has done fantasy, horror, and half of his catalog is kids books.
So I feel like there's plenty of
Well, even Stephen King, he's known as a horror novelist, but at the end of the day, you look at things like Shawshank Redemption or The Green Mile. You wouldn't put that into, or even Dolores Claiborne. Stand by Me. You wouldn't necessarily put those into a horror category. They might be thrillers. They might be mysteries,
or just straight up dramas. Yeah. He's a transcendent one. That Mr. King.
He's a wily sort, isn't he?
He is. He's slippery.
But yes, he's a slippery guy. But I think this time around, the idea of putting ourselves in a box and just saying that this is what we do. Early on, I was definitely we are the exploitation company of the new millennium, and our comics our books are like blunt force trauma to the face. When you read them and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying that that's not going to be the case going forward, but any successful company knows that sustainability doesn't rely on one trick.
Right.
That we always have to come back to the well and think about we listen very much to the people that read our. We have a very connected relationship with our audience, so they're always letting us know what they think about our stuff, and we do take their feedback in mind. But at the end of the day, we've got a lot of creative ideas that we just don't want to.
We don't want to be limited,
right?
We don't,
and the most important thing is
put yourself in too small of a box. You start to get claustrophobic.
For sure.
Important thing is good content. You don't want to pass up a good idea just to stay in a genre.
Absolutely.
And our books are very special. Again, kind of hopping on that point a little bit more. The quality is overseen by me, and if we're not going to be able to put out a book within a certain amount of time, or if we are and it's going to sacrifice quality, then I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah.
If I can't do it the way I want it to come out, then it's not coming out. And what I want is usually just for people to have a book that they can rest a coffee table on top of. Just a really a tangible, worthwhile for their money product.
Now, you've talked about magazines and print and tangible things, and at a time when the world is moving in an opposite direction. Is that a concern? Or
well, you know what? Nostalgia has sort of never been more popular than it is right now.
That's true.
There is so much looking back to, the 70s, the 80s. I don't know if we're going to get there with the 90s. People are like, yeah, grunge. I don't know, maybe. But, 70s and 80s are huge, even back when they, 10 years ago when they did, Tarantino and Rodriguez did the Grindhouse thing, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that was just a pure celebration for people who had that experience back in the day. Now, I'm not of the age to have had that experience back in the day. I saw the revival and enjoyed the hell out of it. It's not something that, it required the previous experience, but it is specifically for those people who get those warm, fuzzy feelings because, it lets them relive, the heyday or the childhood or whatever. And, you're seeing so much nostalgia, happiness, and worship and everything everywhere. So for this, we're sort of taking like this right now with the current series, Gore Shriek Resurrectus. I don't think you've actually said the name of the series yet, right?
I have not yet.
No,
please, by all means.
Yeah. We were kind of doing a background, but yeah.
So this is,
I'm assuming this is what you reached out to me about.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't want to steer this converstion 100%.
No, go.
El Capitan over there should probably do that. But just real quick,
it's a conversation. We all steer it off the cliff together.
Yes. We're all like Twins, the cat who could drive a car.
Just not very well. Yeah, so I mean, this is a book that existed in the 80s, and it's not something that had the reach of Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. This is something that was small and had a fiercely loyal fan base of these people who loved it, just like any cult thing. Yeah. Whatever it is, if it's a movie, a comic book, whatever it is, it has that built-in like fanatical love for it. And I think that right now, with everything that the company has thus far been involved with and is currently involved with, it is really like banking on that. And I think that is what's so exciting, and you're giving these people who loved a thing that already existed but hasn't for like 25 years something that it's that nostalgia glow. And so I think that like the idea is this is our box right now, like what Derek was trying to say and saying correctly. We're in a box. We have a box, but eventually, let's make that box a little bit bigger. This is where we are right now, but we're like a 6-sided die. Let's be a golf ball.
So you said the name and like kind of
Gore Shriek Resurrectus.
Gore Shriek Resurrectish.
That sounds Yiddish.
Go
to Shriek Resurrectish.
All right, it's clearly something I can't
pronounce. So the original series was Gore Shriek, which started in 86.
Okay,
had 13 issues between 86 and 91.
That's correct.
And it was I think the easiest thing for people who don't know the title to kind of put an image in their brain, something like Creepshow, where you have. So it's essentially like a horror comic that's an anthology book that has short stories. They're all tongue-in-cheek kind of comedy, but mixed with like extreme splatterpunk gore stuff and zombies and monstrous things and whatever. And, they tend to have that, sort of a winking humor. And each story could be written by, Well, in the case of Creepshow, it wasn't. But in the case of now, in the original books, Derek, were they written by different people each story?
There were two different volumes of Gore Shriek, Volume 1 and Volume 2, and there were two artists specifically that were. There were many artists for both of those volumes, but there were two artists in particular that were synonymous with the volumes. So Volume 1 was Bruce Spalding Fuller, who's now a special effects artist. He's been a special effects designer in Hollywood for a very long time, but he started off with Gore Shriek. That was his first professional work. And then the second artist with Volume 2 was a guy he goes by the name The Gurch. He will only go by the name The Gurch.
The Gurch. Okay.
He's like Buckethead.
Yeah, he's kind of like our Buckethead.
Pusshead.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, and those guys' artwork styles were defined an independent era. Gore Shriek was part of that whole independent movement of comic books that came out, the black and white books that came out in the early to mid '80s.
Yep.
Like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles started that whole
Sure,
thing.
yeah.
But you also had Dead World, and you had the Last Gasp books, and all the
I was always a big fan of Beautiful Stories for Ugly Children.
yeah, exactly.
Love that series.
So
Yeah.
some of those
Oh, yeah.
books that,
Yeah.
that came out. Then Gore Shriek was one of those books, and we called it Resurrectus because we wanted folks to know that we were resurrecting the entire series, not reprinting
Not
the
just
old
to make me
issues.
try to pronounce it.
Right, just
All right.
you
That's
know.
good to know.
It's like it's not a full resurrection. It's like resurrect-ish.
They had a book called Gore Shriek Delect Us, and again a non-word. And I think that when we decided on Resurrectus, which actually was a decision made by Mike Wason,
Okay.
who goes by Corpsemonger, because we're all kind of X-Men in our own little heads,
Yeah.
And we all have, like Fish over here.
Yeah. No, that's his name. That's not really. No.
He's actually a fish. No,
Yeah.
he's a man.
Yeah, Gilman. But these artists we're bringing back from the dead. Like the first volume, we did bring back Bruce Spalding Fuller, who hadn't drawn a comic book since he left Gore Shriek.
Oh wow.
And we did bring the Gurch back, who's from the UK. So and he only has an AOL account and no other social media whatsoever. So trying to find him
must have been impossible.
we got him. It
Yeah.
took a long time, but and he's so on board. Like people are gonna flip out when they see what he's brought back to the table. Not only with this issue, but what we have in store for him later on, which I'm gonna again practice restraint for now.
Right.
But his artwork is amazing,
It's
and again,
amazing,
it speaks
yeah.
to that whole splatterpunk era of independent comic book horror art back in the day. And we also have a bunch of other artists that are going to be working on this in particular issue. So Gore Shriek Resurrectus Volume 2 drops this Friday. The
Okay.
pre-orders at roughhousepublishing.com.
So that's the 24th.
That's
Because
the
I'm not sure when
24th.
this comes out.
That's right, this isn't live.
Monday. It'll
So
come out
yes,
Monday.
that'll be Friday, May 24th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
So if it was
On roughhousepublishing.com.
That's right.
So they can go when they hear this on Monday. They can stop what they can pause it. They can probably just look it up while they listen.
If you're one of those people who can do two things at once on your phone, if you're an old man like me, I mean,
Yeah.
my God, I can barely do one thing on the phone.
I can't even say the title of your
I'm
comics.
saying, I say the phone.
The phone.
The phone. It's like being on the pot or
Yeah.
something.
you can find us on the Facebook.
Yeah.
The Facebook.
But yeah, if people are listening on Monday, the book will be live at that point. They can start ordering up right then and there. And we do have issues of our original issue, Gore Shriek Resurrectus Volume 1, that they can purchase, and we'll have Volume 2 ready to go. So the book will ship in June, and it's still being worked on now by, I just wanted to
Oh
rattle
yeah.
off
So let's hear some of the artists.
a couple of the artists and a couple of the things that we're offering with this issue. So as far as the artists go, the Gurch is the big draw for this issue. A lot of people haven't seen him do anything comic book wise in 20 years or so. But also an artist called William Scarr. I'm going to be doing a Facebook Live on this coming Thursday, and if any of your listeners are interested, they'll be able to go to my page, even though it'll have already happened.
They can go back and
see it, where I'll be going into a lot of their lineages and histories and how we found them and what they're producing for us. But William Scarr, Alexandro Pyromalis, David James Ravenna, Carl Dahmer, Mark Bloodworth, who used to work on Dead World back in the day. Tom Schoolin wrote a story. He's actually the creator of Gore Shriek and Fantico Enterprises, who we have the license from. Fantico has done a bunch of books back in the day, but one of their most popular ones is, besides Gore Shriek, was they did a novelization of Night of the Living Dead.
Oh,
yeah, which is amazing. Mike Wason is the other partner in Roughhouse. He's one of the writers, and Steve is actually going to be writing a story in that issue as well. So the first Roughhouse project that Steve will be working on is Gore Shriek Resurrectus Volume 2.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and we're going to be doing some extras with each issue. So the issue is going to have two separate covers, cover A and cover B. Both are Gurch covers. And
are they going to be chromium glow-in-the-dark variants?
No, no, but you will be able to stand them up without holding on to them, and you can put a TV tray on top of them.
Okay.
So, like I said, they're very sturdy, beautiful-looking black and white books. But each book will have 2 stickers apiece. It'll have a double-sided fold-out poster in the middle of the book itself in color. But besides that, cover A will have a double-sided Gurch postcard. So it'll have an advertisement for a false advertisement for well, it's probably better just to see what he came up with because it's kind of gnarly and it's fun in its own right.
How the Gurch Stole Christmas.
How the Gurch Stole Christmas. And there's also going to be a full-length 11-song CD. So we started off as...
So there's going to be a CD in with this?
Yes, and it doesn't change the cover price.
Now, would this be considered a comic or graphic novel, or is there really any difference anymore?
It's a comic book. We upped it from 48 pages on the first issue to 52 for this one, and I think we're going to keep the 52-page page count all the way through to the end of the series. But again, we do special incentives for each issue that comes out. Each one has their own set of extras that are specific to that issue to make it special for fans.
But there's also 2 covers.
So this one has 2 different covers. The last one had 3. But also with each of those covers is its own set of extras. So if you order cover A, you'll get the 11-song soundtrack CD, which was produced. They're called the Maniac Banshees, and their music is Gore Shriek inspired.
Okay.
When we were a crowdfunded company and we were doing books that way, they gave us an amazing amount of money, so much so that we called them the executive producer or assistant producer of the book. And I did the cover for their CD, and their music is very horror and Gore Shriek inspired. So people will get a whole 11-song CD, complete full-length CD that's wrapped and it looks like it came out of a store as part of buying that cover.
It's a pretty sweet deal.
Pretty awesome. And again, you get the double-sided poster, the 2 stickers, and then you get the postcard, and that's cover A. Now, if you buy cover B, we supplement the CD and the postcard with an ash can, a 10-page ash can, which we calling Gore Shriek Resurrectus Volume 2.5. And
well, just for listeners who may not be familiar with an ash can, it's a small version of a comic?
It's a small, pulpy version of a comic book. So it'll have 2 extra stories inside that are just for the people who bought that issue. And there'll be some extra commentary content inside that little 10-pager. And in addition to that, there's going to be a Gore Shriek barf bag that
nice.
A full-size barf bag that we include in there as well.
Because fun.
So I just feel like that's got to be a great phone call, like calling some printing company and be like, hey, can you make us barf bags?
Well, it's funny. If you try to run a barf bag through a printer, I learned the hard way that it screws up the printing and the printer.
Yeah.
Don't do that, kids.
Yeah, so don't do that. So we actually decal the...
okay. So you make a decal.
All
right.
And it makes the bag itself more sturdy as well. And
right.
It makes for a fantastic collectible.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so that's kind of what we do all together. And right now we're really pushing our Resurrectus ongoing series line. And we're kind of keeping everything else under wraps. But we'll be producing some new titles besides Gore Shriek starting the beginning of next year.
And I don't want to get too into kind of like any spoilers.
You can try.
But
see how far you get.
Since you're one of the writers, why don't you give us a quick elevator pitch synopsis of what your story is?
The first one for Gore Shriek 2 is a story that I came in and there was already a concept. So I'm taking. So this is sort of the one time that it'll be more of a collaboration sort of a deal, and a concept. There are some pages. I'm writing all of the copy for it, and it's basically a really cool, what's generally considered to be a weird Western.
Okay.
I always liked calling them horror Westerns because that's literally what they are. But going all the way back to, I always name drop this guy, Robert E. Howard, my boy. He's the guy who wrote all the Conan stories in the 30s and stuff, and he really was like also he's known for Conan. He's really the guy who started the weird westerns. Basically, any sort of a western story that has any sort of a supernatural or horror element in it, monsters, ghosts, whatever you want, serial killers, technically, anything that's a little off kilter for that genre. So I'm a huge fan of weird westerns, and I have actually have a weird western coming out in another book.
Mm-hmm.
Quick plug. So the book Wicked Weird is coming out in August, put out by the New England Horror Writers, and I have a story that's a weird western in that. Pretty excited about that one. But so this sort of opportunity came along, and Derek had this idea and this concept, and it's like, oh man, match made in heaven. So that's I don't want to give too much away, but it's a weird western, as there's stuff going on.
Just some weird things.
It's weird. There's it stars an unscrupulous snake oil salesman, as they tended to be.
Nice.
I don't know if there were any snake oil salesmen with scruples.
Still tend to be. Not much has changed.
No.
It should be fun.
I would argue after you read the story that it's not too much different than the kind of stuff you buy from a snake oil salesman in real life.
Now, is that something that you guys try to reflect in your work? Is kind of I feel really good horror always kind of shone a light on the real, like, I don't know if you consider it horror, but I find it horrifying. Black Mirror.
Yeah. Black Mirror does it exceptionally well.
It shines a light kind of on what's screwed up with the world today.
Right.
Like, is that something you guys try to work in?
That's not as much my purpose.
Yeah.
I would say I love Black Mirror, and the fact that they do it so well to the point where you're like, damn, this is going to happen. We screwed.
Oh, anytime there's an episode I watch, I'm like, I need a hug because it's too close to home.
Yeah.
With Gore Shriek, it's been known to be more contemporary. So like where the old Tale from the Crypt had to be that gothic horror feel. And it was definitely that tongue-in-cheeky. That's basically where Creepshow was spawned from.
Right.
It emulated that when it came out, and Creepshow was a continuation of that. But Gore Shriek was always kind of known for being a little bit more on the contemporary side and falling in that splatterpunk era writing style. So obviously, there's a warning on the front of the book that's been there since day one that says, "Warning: this book contains disturbing material and is not intended for children." So we certainly try to mix the stories so that they're not all following the same template. One story might be like, that was awesome. It had a little kind of twist at the end and it was funny, and then we'll hit you with a story that's like deadly serious after that, and it's like, okay, I need a bath.
Yeah.
I need that barf bag that we
handy
that we have in the second book.
If only it wasn't a collectible.
If it wasn't collectible, they're going to have to buy two, and then they can puke in one and they can save the other.
But I always like those kind of anthologies that really change it up. And
yes,
I remember I grew up on Amazing Stories.
Mm-hmm.
Which was phenomenal. You'd have an episode that was hysterically funny, and another one that was a real tearjerker.
Yeah, I just kind of thinking about the themes of the first book briefly. The first book is the first story is very, very surrealistic. So you take from it whatever you want. It's just very, very bizarre and dark, and it's almost like a glimpse into a version of hell, if you will. Mm-hmm. The next story after that is actually really tragic. It's in an act of desperation, the world comes apart around this individual in the most graphic and supernatural of ways. Almost punishment for trying to figure out the supernatural, if you will. Another story was almost right out of a storybook, where it would be a fable, almost a haiku. It was so small, but it just has that punchline that gets you, that very typical anthology kind of punchline. And then, there are some commentaries on the first book. There was a commentary on, us taking away, I don't want to say Americans, but the world in general. We take away from this world a lot more than we give back. Mm-hmm. So there's a story that actually has a punishment for that.
Oh.
So to give you an idea.
Yeah. I, in general, like as a writer, I enjoy stories and crafting stories where if it's not a commentary, it's a matter of the main characters are getting punished for their own actions. I think there's a difference between something like a Hostel or a Human Centipede, which are not my bags, and something that where the characters maybe deserved it. Yeah, I like it when violence and terrible stuff is in there, but it's justified. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what I love about, like, say, Creepshow. If we stick with Creepshow, if we stick with the movie because it has the most appeal, everybody's I think seen that. But with the exception of the Lonesome Tale of Geordie Verrill, which is the one where Stephen King pricks his finger on meteor shit and turns into a plant monster and kills himself. With the exception of that, like everything really, everybody kind of got their comeuppance.
Desserts,
yeah, they're just desserts. And literal cake in one, in fact.
Yeah.
Literal cake. Literal desserts. But even then, Geordie Verrill was kind of being punished for being stupid. Right. So there's even, so there's a little bit. I guess to answer your question of what sort of stuff themes that's in my stuff, that's in Gore Shriek too, especially with the one Derek was just alluding to.
And so this is volume 2. Volume 1 obviously came out a while ago.
Volume 1 was originally our second crowdfunded book. Yep. The first one was a book called The Dead Omnibus, which was this giant graphic novel. It was almost 300 pages long, and that was our first foray into resurrecting old comic properties. And Gore Shriek was a continuation of that idea, where we're like, we love all these old comic book properties that are now defunct. A lot of times, the companies themselves that produce them are also defunct. So we were able to go back and say how much we loved what they did, and can we put our own stamp on it? Now that you've had your run with it and it's over with, can we introduce this to a brand new audience? Steve mentioned the whole nostalgia craze that we're in the middle of right now in pop culture. Those appeal to two separate masters, to the people that grew up in that era, like myself. Steve said that he kind of came up on the back end of the Grindhouse craze, and I, fortunately or otherwise, was there for the first wave as well. So I know how much I loved it, and I wanted it for that's kind of where I like to sit anyways with my style. But the other master is introducing that to a new audience in the hopes that you're going to take somebody who's 21 and introduce them to the book, or even younger than that, teenager, if you will, and that they'll hopefully love it as much as you did, but you're the arbiter of that product that, without you, they don't get a chance to see it. So you're reintroducing the product and hoping that people, it becomes part of their childhood growing up, if you will, or their introduction, in some cases, to comic books in general. We sell to horror fans. A lot of horror fans that I've sold to aren't comic book fans, but they buy horror stuff.
Right.
So and a lot of them didn't know what Gore Shriek ever was. So you're introducing it and letting them take it to the next level, and they've done that in spades. Our fans have been very, very good to us.
And I would say that I don't know, almost more than anything else I can think of, other than maybe music fans. But if you're like a really big horror fan, you almost have this built in. You're like almost forced to love old stuff, right? Like who can call themselves a horror fan and has absolutely and have no regard whatsoever for the old Universal horror movies? Right. Like that's almost impossible. If you go to a horror convention, you can't like turn your head without seeing a Boris Karloff or a Bela Lugosi or whatever. They're everywhere. It's sort of like you're forced to go so far back. The nostalgia keeps going and keeps going. That rabbit hole, you just keep going down it, and that's certainly what happened for me.
And with horror fans, I always found there was a totally different kind of love for it, because I had a comic book shop. I did Comic Cons, I did horror conventions. At Comic Cons, you get the people be like, "Well, you have this marked $50. I saw it on eBay for $45. Can you give me it for $40?" And you'd be like, "Well, you have to have it shipped." So that's gonna. I'm like, I'm here trying to make a living, at horror conventions, people would just walk up, point at something like, "I want that." You'd be like, "Well, it's $90." Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
And they were so passionate that they just loved it. They didn't care. Like, the money didn't mean anything to them.
The first convention that I did as a comic book artist was a regular comic book convention, and the first book that I had published was just kind of like an all ages. It had art. My style was good for what it was, but I wouldn't necessarily call it horror.
Mm-hmm.
It was still kind of an all ages book with my style in it, if you will. And then when the next book that we did was Lucio Fulci's zombie graphic novel, and we did it at a comic book convention, and I was literally turning kids away because they wanted to buy it and they were too young.
Right.
So I kind of switched gears really quick to horror conventions exclusively, and that made my convention career. Like, that's when I started to make money.
Right.
So you're right. I mean, not only are they passionate people, speaking to everybody here in the room who's experienced horror conventions, but some of the most amazing people.
Oh,
attend
they're
these
so
conventions.
nice.
And it's people that at using Rough House as an example, we consider part of the family. That we literally, like, when I go to do another book, I have these people in my head because they've been with us for so long, and they bought everything that we've ever done. They shared our lives with them. We share our lives with them too. We've met so many people in that circuit,
Mm-hmm.
yourself included.
Yeah.
And these are people that we're going to be with in one form or another, hopefully for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
So it's been a life-changing experience, and it's a group of people that have been demonized in the media and everything else as the horror back in the 70s and 80s even, but
the Satanic Panic.
Satanic Panic. It was considered one step above porn.
Yep.
Or even one step below,
right?
Depending on who you talk to.
Mm-hmm. Which is better? I don't know. Continue.
I don't know. I am of two minds on that. Because now it's become so part of pop culture that it almost lost its edge, or you could argue that it has, but it's still where we live. It's still where we thrive, and it's still the people that I want to be around, and it's the people that I want to work for, and I want to produce awesome stuff for. So nothing much has changed in 20 years. I mean, once we found our niche, we stuck with it, and those fans have been very, very good to us. So when we say that we might branch out and do other things, I'm positive that those are the fans that are going to follow us.
Right. Yeah.
Based on that passion that you mentioned.
Yeah. You mean the ruffians?
The ruffians. What did I say? Oh, no, I used the F word.
No, you didn't.
Did I?
No, you just said... Oh, yeah, you said fans.
Yeah.
I'm like,
the
family?
F word that I was
friends?
talking
What
to.
is he talking about?
I just wanted to use
He's rambling off all the F words that I said tonight. He said family, friends. He said focaccia rolls. He said...
Focaccia rolls? What? Oh, God. Get out of here. Go have a bagel.
A bagel. Well, I think it's great that you guys are...
After you read your next issue of Resurrectish.
It's not a full resurrection, but it's all right.
I think it's great that you guys are working on this project, and anytime friends are doing something that they're passionate about, it's always fun to see where it goes.
Sure.
You guys are going to be at ScareCon this year?
Yes.
I know you were pestering me if I was going to... Oh, God, it's only 3 weeks away?
3 weeks away.
Is it 3 weeks already?
Yeah, 3 weeks away. It's June 6th, 7th, 8th.
Yeah.
Wow, okay. You were asking me if I was going to be there. I don't know now, because I thought it was further off.
Because last year I passed you and you were hanging out with your buddy D. Snyder.
My pal D. Snyder.
Yeah, I know. You're a close personal pal.
Me and D are
you're
super
best
tight.
friend.
Your Sunday spaghetti buddy.
Yeah.
I know.
And my Sunday spaghetti buddy? I don't. Is that a thing? I don't even know.
I just wanted to make Fish laugh.
All right.
He's over there just hanging out with me.
I don't know if D. Snyder eats pasta. That guy is ripped.
Yeah, he's in great shape.
He's ridiculous.
He's lean protein.
But where can people go again to get the next, actually both volumes? By the time this is out, they'll be able to get both volumes.
So right now we offered a small incentive for us to sell our books in local comic book shops. So that incentive is available on our site. It's called the Brick and Mortar Wholesale experience, if you will. And that's where we'll sell our books, and we'll actually distribute to those local companies. But predominantly, we're an online business. And again, keeping it special, we don't want to print 1,000, hundreds of thousands of copies of any individual book. We keep the print run small, we keep it intimate, and we make it special. And once it's gone, we moved on. But it's online, and it's at roughhousepublishing.com. Very easy.
And will that also have lists of your appearances?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we have a news page, obviously, and a store, a complete online store. We also have a page called Meet the Ruffians, where we have all of us on there and all the people that work with us, who've ever worked with us in the past, and links to all of their stuff, because we want to kind of keep our community together and let people know that, through us, you might meet the next artist that's going to work on your next book or do music for your next project or what have you. But on that page, it also lists all of our show appearances. So right now we're doing ScareCon, and then in October, Rock and Shock.
Rock and Shock, which is so much fun.
It is. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, so we don't do a ton of shows. So definitely, check us out also on the Facebook group. We're always posting stuff almost daily on there. And, check us out. If you can come and see us in person, we'd love to meet you. I mean, there's always sketches you can get right at the table by you can get some Derek Rook originals, which is really fun.
What if I want a Steve Van Samson original? Actually, you draw well. I was going to make a joke, but he draws well.
Then I'll just sign it, Steve Van Samson.
I mean, I draw you one, Andy, but it's not what I'm there for.
Yeah.
That's the thing. But
I was trying to make a joke, but I'm like, oh wait, no, he can draw.
So, do you want to just real quick talk about sketch cards at all? Because that's a pretty awesome thing.
Well, yeah. So for Resurrect is Volume 1, one of the incentives that we had on our website was a sketch
we're not
card
doing that for
offer.
2.
We are doing that for 2.
I thought we were. All right.
Yes. As a matter of fact, I forgot to mention that. So part of all of the extras that you receive is an original sketch from one of our artists. I've been doing them mostly because it's easier, to be quite honest with you, than sending a bunch of stuff out waiting for it to come back. But it's all original content.
His stuff is incredible.
Oh,
you just said that like you're making it sound like it's a concession.
No,
it's not a concession.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Next to your large popcorn, I'll draw you a sketch.
Hey,
as a concession.
Bada bing, bada boom.
Bada bing. Fish will butter it for you for free.
That sounded a little too dirty.
After he's done checking his text messages.
I think he's
that's
social
Tinder.
medializing.
That's Tinder.
That's Tinder.
It's Tinder.
Oh, wait, it's wicked Tinder.
Under 17. That's Kinder.
All right, Derek's welcome back anytime. If anyone who makes fun of Fish is welcome
Fish
back
is
anytime.
like the silent partner.
Yeah,
I just like making him laugh.
Unless you talk Star Trek, he's pretty much sits over there.
Got you.
And produces.
So that went over really well. And again, we kept it special. We only did 12 last time. So I haven't made a decision on how many we'll do this time. We get so busy that to sit down and just draw is very difficult. I do some sketches at appearances. Sometimes it's harder to do that when you're selling for the weekend.
Right.
But for ScareCon, I'm going to try to make myself available for that. Now that Steve's with us, he can kind of
run interference while you're drawing. Yeah.
While I'm providing that for folks. So
you hear that, people? So come on by because he'll draw you something.
That's it.
I'll run interference. Don't you worry about me. I think that's a foot sports ball joke or reference. I don't know much about sports, but I'm going to do it.
Isn't interference a bad thing in sports?
I don't know what it is.
I feel like it's a bad thing in sports.
I mean, is it when you score a touchdown on the infield? I don't know.
Yeah.
Even Maddie was like, she's like, Dad, it's a football.
So you can also catch Steve Van Samson on his sports podcast.
Sports ball. I don't know what's going on.
Steve, can you tell them a little bit about what you'll be selling at the Rough House table?
Definitely. So Derek has been kind enough to welcome me into Rough House, and that's amazing and everything. So this is our first appearance together, which is pretty cool. For now, I'm going to be selling my 2 books, which I actually talked about last time I was on the show. The first one is called The Bone Eater King. The second one is Marrow Dust. Marrow Dust is the sequel. They're in the series called Predator World, and basically it has a 2-word elevator pitch where you're either interested instantly or you don't care. You ready?
I'm ready.
Vampires, in Africa. Okay, it's 3 words.
That's 3 words.
It's 3 words.
I was going to call you out on that.
Yeah, it's 3 words. 3-word pitch. It's still pretty short, though.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's basically a post-apocalyptic series about vampires like you've never seen them before. And it's horror. It's for adults. It's gritty. It's action-packed. And it stars really badass, very damaged, very realistic woman character of the sort you don't usually get to see. So, yeah, check it out. I'll be signing and selling and giving free high fives because that's what I do.
Outstanding.
Free high fives at the Rough House table. And
do you know where you guys are going to be located in the building yet? Or
I don't. I got us an end cap for this show, but I don't know. They don't
give you the floor
divulge
plan.
that information. So
look for an end cap.
Look for an end cap. We should be pretty easy to find. We're loud.
Basically, look for Conan the Barbarian. That's Derek.
I know. And
a bald guy.
I was waiting to hear who you are.
I don't know.
All right.
No, man, you can't. All right.
I feel like you got a Ming the Merciless thing going.
Yeah. Ming the Merciless. Yeah.
So look for Conan and Ming.
Yeah, sure.
And
I
mingle.
love those shows.
We're getting the band back together.
All right. Thanks again for coming down to talk to us.
Absolutely.
And any parting words?
When I'm God, everyone dies.
And also, Gore Shriek, Resurrectus, Volume 2, pre-buy, goes live on the 24th at 7 p.m.
And
roughhousepublishing.com.
Yes.
Thank you for saying that so I didn't have to.
Yeah. And come check us out in ScareCon.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay, thanks for checking out the podcast. And don't forget to check out our other podcasts on the Inebri-art Podcast Network. There's the Bar Talk. There's Old Colony Cast. There's, of course, the Inebri-art Podcast. And our latest, Retro Redoctopus, a kind of nerd genre podcast that you can check out now, all available on our website at inebri-art.com. And pretty much available everywhere that podcasts are available, on Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, all those things. And if you don't see it where you're looking, let us know. We'll try to get onto that as well. And you can also email us at inebriart@yahoo.com with your questions, complaints, and suggestions. And also, if you could take the time to rate and review us on iTunes, that would be phenomenal. That helps us get more exposure and bring more of these great podcasts to your ears. And thanks again for listening.